the old Silk Road. Of the great emperor of China, which had been for centuries the center of civilization in Asia, the Romans knew nothing. Though China's history had begun almost 2,000 years before Rome was founded, the Romans had heard nothing of it. They had only a vague idea that somewhere in the far eastern Asia lived people who made silk. Therefore, Far East in Asia, on Strabo's map of the world, appears merely the word Sears. And of this new Roman Empire, which had so recently sprung up, the Chinese knew nothing, except that somewhere out in the West were barbarians who wished to purchase silk. These were the two great empires of the world, China and Rome. Yet they knew nothing of each other. Their only connection was a slender thread of silk. Stretching its length across the wide expanse of Central Asia ran a narrow caravan trail, later to be known as the Old Silk Road. Over that trail, on camelback, bales of precious Chinese silk were carried westward. For 6,000 miles. Over the silent burning desert went the caravan across barren steppes through deep mountain passes in sandstorm and blizzard, heat and winter fog. From Shitzi and Hangyou, the Yellow River, the camels with their tinkling bells and loaded backs padded out through the Jade Gate, the last in the Great Wall, and months later knelt to be unloaded in the capital of the Parthians on the Euphrates River or in the market of Damascus. From there the bales of silk might be taken around the Sea of Galilee down to Tyre and Sidon to be embroidered with golden thread or dyed with famous Tyrian purple before being loaded on galleys and ships on to Rome. This caravan trail had been opened about 130 years before this by a famous Chinese traveler in the reign of the Emperor Wu. That was the first time that the Chinese had gone outside their own empire. They had believed and called it all that is under heaven. It was not to sell silk, but because of the Huns that the great traveler had been sent out by the Chinese emperor. China was in constant danger of being attacked by the semi-savage tribes of wild horsemen who inhabited Central Asia. These savage tribes raided and plundered the civilized nations east and west of them from China to Parthia. The Parthians called them the Scyths. The Chinese name for them was Hangsu Nun, or Huns. As a protection against these barbarians, the Chinese had built a great wall, which ran over hills and valleys along the northern border for 1,500 miles. Wu Tai extended the wall and added more watchtowers, but the wall only helped to keep out the Huns. It did not defeat them. Against these wild hordes, the Chinese were obliged to wage almost continual war. Wu Tai decided that instead of waiting for the Huns to attack, as had been done in the past, he would send an army outside of the Great Wall and drive back the Huns beyond the Gobi Desert. This still would not be final. The Huns might return, and there were no people outside the Western Wall to break their advance. Formerly, just outside the western end of the Great Wall, there had lived a people called the Yongxin. But they had been attacked and defeated by the Huns, who had killed their king and used his skull for a drinking cup. Not strong enough to take revenge on the enemies, the sad-hearted young Chung had packed up their tents and moved with their herds of sheep and oxen far to the west, on the border of Parthia. They had found a new home. Wu Ti wished them to return to their old place between China and the Huns. So it was with an invitation to these people to return and accept the protection of China, that emperor. Wu had sent out a brave young officer by the name of Chang Ching. Chang Ching was also to bring back horses. The Chinese needed horses to fight the Huns, for the Huns were wild riding horsemen. A caravan of 100 men started with Chang Ching on the dangerous mission out into then trackless spaces of Asia. Only 2 reaching their destination in the west, and it was 12 years before the brave Chang Chang himself returned to China. He had been captured by the Huns and held prisoner for 10 years. When he returned, he brought word then that Yu Chi would not come back. They were contented where they were. But he brought the horses and alfalfa seed to plant for their food, and many were the tales he had to tell. He was hailed and honored by his countrymen upon him, and was bestowed the title of great traveler. So the way to the west had been opened. The slender trail across the plains, deserts, and mountains passes of Asia. Over it, silk spun in far-off Chinese courtyards were now being carried westward to be worn by unknown ladies of Rome. Along that trail, caravans were continually traveling and would continue to travel for another 200 years. Then Chinese control over the tribes of Asia would grow too weak to hold it open. The tinkle of camel bells would no longer be heard along the old Silk Trail, the old Silk Road. The sand would drift in and cover that slender trail, and it would sink back again into the desert.